So this morning I want to share with you something I'm learning with my son, the chassan, the to be, that he will share, God willing, at in the course of the Shabbat Brachot. As you know, the 7 days of celebration that follows the chuppah. Two insights. The first, or first of two divrei Torah. So the first is this. This week's parsha is called Mishpatim. Mishpatim means literally justice laws. As you know, Jewish law falls under 3 categories: Torah law, Mishpatim, Eidut, and Chokim. Mishpatim are the logical laws that are required for a functioning society. Many of these laws we would come to the conclusion they need to be observed even without the Torah. 1 second. As the Talmud says, we would learn, for example, modesty from the cat, industriousness from the ant, loyalty from the dove, and so on. So these are the logical laws: not to steal, not to kill, and so forth. Then there's a second category called Eidus, which are testimonial laws. The word aid means a witness who bears testimony. So these are laws that logic would not dictate we have to observe, but they make sense because they bear testimony to important events in our history, for example, like the observance of Pesach and Shavuot and Sukkot and Shabbat, for that matter. That reminds us that there's a creator and reminds us of our purpose here on earth. So they are Eidut, they bear testimony. Mezuzah is another example, Tefillin another example. And then there are Chukim, statutes or laws, decrees, as they're often translated, that defy logic. So this week's parsha is called Mishpatim because the laws contained therein are by and large Mishpatim, laws that execute justice, which begs the following question. One of the laws in the parsha is the law of the prohibition to eat or even benefit from meat and milk. Just to clarify, not only is it forbidden to eat, consume meat and milk, one cannot derive benefit. In other words, to make a mixture and sell it, or to make a mixture and use it somehow as a balm or a salve, is also forbidden. Now, classically, of course, the prohibition of meat and milk falls under the category of chukim. What's wrong, what's immoral, what's damaging about drinking a glass of milk, God forbid, with a steak. Torah decrees it, so it's chukim. So the question is, why does this law appear, the law of the prohibition of meat and milk, which is a classic chok, in the parsha, which deals with, as implied by its name, Mishpatim, logical, rational law? One of the many answers to that question is, quoting the Rambam Maimonides, who writes in his Mishnah Torah, his magnum opus, the Mishnah Torah, with respect to the chukim. He says that even though they are statutes and decrees, one should nonetheless consider them contemplate them, and offer explanation to the degree that one can. So we need to endeavor to understand even the chukim. Hence, that's the reason that this chuk, this statute that overtly defies logic, meat and milk, nonetheless, it's placed in the Parshas Mishpatim to tell us that one should seek explanation nonetheless. But atet lotam, and to give it a reason, a rationale. Okay, that answers the question. Now the question is, why would we bother with the reasons altogether? Why not do and observe the mitzvot simply because God commanded? Why is it a mitzvah, the Rambam is saying, that we're obligated to understand not only the logical mitzvot, but even the ones that are not? And the question is, why even try to understand the logical ones? God commands, that's enough. Faith, surrender, commitment. Why do we need understanding? The answer is, level one, the reason we need to understand is because God desires a relationship with us. Not just our obedience, not just our surrender, but a relationship. And the relationship means you give everything you've got. You got a mind, give your mind. A mind that understands. That's how the mind works. It wants to understand and needs to understand. Well, that's got to be invested in the relationship. You've got a heart that feels, then you've got to feel the other. You have five senses. We all must be filled with the other. That's a relationship. Not just surrender, but engage. Fill the self with the other. So therefore, we are to not only surrender to the will of God, but wherever possible, understand and therefore feel. Because if the mind understands, the emotions can be stirred or the emotions are born. So why? Because that's what God desires, is relationship. Let's explain this a little deeper. Chassidus explains that all mitzvot, all 613 of them, are at once beyond understanding, and at the same time, all of them do have a measure of understanding. How is that? Answer. All mitzvot are rooted in the very essential will of God. And that's utterly beyond understanding and rationale. He created understanding and rationale. He is utterly beyond it. There's no reason for God's existence. If there'd be a reason, well, forget the God you worship and worship the reason. Of course, there isn't. He is eternal. No reason for his being, he is. The mitzvot at their root are quite the same. There is his essential will that transcend logic. And we have demonstrated this in previous classes. But we have discovered in the most eminently logical commandments, clauses, occasions, cases that utterly defy logic, contrary to the rationale and common sense, which we will not demonstrate again now. We've done that in the past. So all mitzvot, even thou shalt not kill, thou shalt not steal, thou shalt be loyal, as logical as they all are, at their root, they're absolutely supra-logical at their root. All mitzvot, not just the chukim, not just the law, for example, of meat and milk. By the same token, all the mitzvot, even the ones that are entirely and transparently illogical, like meat and milk, or the law of the red heifer, or the law of shatnez, the prohibition to wear garments made of wool and linen. All of these mitzvot, my friends, have descended to us, explains Chassidus, through the four spiritual worlds. The divine will is invested in these worlds. And what make up these spiritual worlds are God's divine attributes. Attributes which are Chokhmah, Bina, Das, the divine intellect, the divine emotion, a divine system, divine intelligence. So all of the mitzvot begin with the very essence of God at their root. They utterly transcend logic, but they descend through the worlds of Atzilut, Bria, Yetzira, and Asiya. Think of it as packaging, acquiring the trimmings and packaging of these worlds, which to one degree or another are all about structure and logic and systems. And so therefore, to one degree or another, there's logic and structure and system to all of the commandments because they come from God to us in this world that exists at the bottom of this hierarchy, this chain of command, these four spiritual worlds corresponding to the four letters of his holy name. The difference between mitzvahs are, some are invested more in the world and some are invested more marginally. To offer a simple parable or illustration, you can be in a place and acquire a foreign place, a place foreign to your birthplace. But in this place, you acquire its customs and language. Now becomes part of the way you talk and dress. Or you can be there and still retain your identity while still on some level engaging with the environment and that particular society on its terms. But you still remain fundamentally retain your identity. Therein lies the difference between the different mitzvot. Some of them become, in the words of Chassidut and Kabbalah, enclosed in the worlds. They descend, the divine will, and others kind of pass through. In the Hebrew terms, it's either hitlapshut or derech ma'avir. Either way, to some degree, some packaging is acquired. That's why Chassidut does explain even the most irrational of mitzvot, like meat and milk. It does offer explanation, and offers explanation for the red heifer, and offers explanation for the laws of forbidden mixtures, and the laws of purity and impurity, which at the surface seem to be supra-rational. And at the same time, Chassidus emphasizes that all the mitzvot at their root are divine and infinite and beyond all reason and grasp, not just human grasp, but even angelic grasp, any grasp, truly infinite. So why does God want us to understand? Why does he envelop his divine infinite will, invested, clothed in the trappings, in the packaging of reason and logic, and sometimes the packaging is extremely elaborate and nuanced. Hence, the hundreds of thousands of Torah books explaining the commandments on so many levels. Why? Because, as we said, he wants a relationship with us. finite human beings with hearts and minds that seek to understand and seek to feel. He wants to be part of our world, and therefore he envelops his infinite divine will with the packaging, the trimmings, the garments of logic and emotion, because that's the relationship. And that's what he desires. So what are we left with? Given that our relationship with God is reflected in our relationship with our spouses, particularly, and our fellow human being, but particularly with a spouse, which is a unique relationship that shares a bond such that no other relationship has in common with. The marriage fundamentally must be surrender and devotion. That's the core of it. I'm committed to you for no reason other than you exist. And it's a privilege to be in a relationship with you. On a deeper level, you and I are inseparable. We are one. And therefore my devotion isn't because I don't love myself because of any reason or virtue. I want to live because I exist. And so my love for you is because you exist. Not for a reason. That's the foundation. That means surrender, faith. I believe in you. I believe we're meant to be. Why do I believe that? Because we stood under the chuppah that hovered over our heads, that represented the transcendent soul, where we are one. But it can't stop there. It can't just be the chuppah. The hovering, transcendent, unifying truth that is bigger than both of our consciousness. It doesn't make a marriage when it's whatever you want, honey. You don't have to explain. I don't have to understand. I don't have to feel. That's what you want. I'm devoted. That's the foundation, to be sure, but not enough, because we're not engaging then. We're not truly meshing with every fiber of our being. It must be a meeting of minds and hearts and bodies. And for that, I need to understand you. I need to love and be in awe of you, not just surrender to you. I must be filled with you at the same time that I surrender to you. And that's exactly what God wants from us. And that is why in the Parsha that deals with the logical laws, we're struck with a law that's beyond logic. God says, understand that too. And understand by the same token that the logical laws at their root are purely divine and transcend all reason. Which means, amongst other things, that I want to understand you, not because I want to understand, because I want to understand you. I want to feel, need to feel, not because I need to feel, but because I need to feel you. That's the fusion of the two. It is understanding. It's feeling. But those experiences are only valuable to me because they're you. And to have that with somebody else, I have no interest. Because it's not you. That's marriage. And that's what's being conveyed in this parsha by having the law, the supra-rational law, inserted, it seems, out of character in a chapter, in a parsha that deals with Mishpatim, justice, logic, and morality.